What's going on, everyone? Welcome to a Thursday edition of Back Your Play with Q. I'm your host, as always, Rich Quinones. Hang out with us on social at Rich Q on Q and the YouTube channel, Rich Q on Q. Hashtag BYP Busy Show. Little potpourri with our guy from On3 Sports donning the Rutgers gear. Our good friend Nick Kosko does a great job covering college football, college basketball, RU wrestling, and they are ranked, what are they, 23rd? Getting ready to take on
it's 24th. Yeah. So
Oh.
I'll be on the call Big Ten Plus Friday and Sunday. Number 20 Michigan State coming to town to Jersey Mike's Arena. Then number 3 Michigan coming on for a little Sunday matinee at 2:00. So excited to be back in the building. First home meets for Rutgers in over 70 days, actually. So finally back on the home turf.
They had a nice win the other night against Ohio State, right? In overtime.
Yeah, basketball did. Yeah, absolutely. So things are coming up. Rutgers Scarlet Knights right now, and the basketball team now in the top 25 as well. Number 20.
23.
They're number 23. Yeah, right.
23,
yeah, wrestling.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That's what I meant. I meant the hoops to start. I forgot you are the wrestling guru.
Well, of course. I mean, I'm donning the gear right now.
I know. I gotta squint a little bit. You know, give me a little.
No, that's all right.
Give me a little charity, will you? So, all right. Let's start with the hoops, and then we'll get into the college and the Harbaugh news, which you predicted on BYP as well. All right. So I mentioned Rutgers 23rd against Michigan State. Michigan State's laying 3. Spencer had 21. I think the kid May had the big 3 the other night in overtime for them. Where are you at right now? Is this a team that you believe can make not only a deep run in conference play, but come March?
Yeah, it certainly seems like it. I mean, when you watch that victory over Ohio State, as we just mentioned before at home, I mean, again, Rutgers always has that big home court advantage at Jersey Mike's Arena, which I still want to call the rack, of course, but of course the powers that be need me to, plug the actual name now. But on the floor, I mean, they're really good. I mean, I didn't think this was going to be a team this year that was going to be able to duplicate the success over the last couple of years where, if you actually add in the canceled 2020 tournament, this is a team that probably would have made the tournament 3 years in a row now, which is unheard of in the last 20, 25 years of Rutgers basketball. So officially looking like they're going to make 3 straight NCAA tournaments at this point. They're number 2 in the Big Ten right now, only behind Purdue, which is number 3 last I checked. That's in the top 25. And Purdue's only loss is to Rutgers. And believe it or not, it was actually at Mackey Arena out in West Lafayette. So Scarlet Knights are doing everything right now. Cliff Amorier is unbelievable at center. They obviously have Caleb McConnell back as a veteran presence. The young guys are stepping up as well. The transfer Cam Spencer, as you mentioned, is a knockdown shooter, and everything's just coming up for them right now because the way they're playing right now, they can compete against anybody in the Big Ten. So if we're talking a regular season title, it's probably within the cards right now with the way they're playing. Come March tournament time, can they make a run in a Big Ten tournament and win the whole thing in a bracket format? Absolutely. How deep can they go in the NCAA tournament? Remains to be seen. But I would say right now, with the way they're playing and the way they're recruiting, by the way, which I'll get into in a second, they are probably on track for anything less than getting to the Sweet 16 this year is probably going to be a disappointment right now for the Scarlet Knights.
Wow, that's high praise when you think about it. And you mentioned that win against Purdue. Purdue's lone loss 66-64. For years we would hammer Rutgers, right, in state, especially when it came to football, keeping in-house and the recruiting. But I've had these conversations. I think those that were making those types of comments, you just want to push a certain agenda, so to speak, and not give them their just due because try to put a competitive product on the field with football. Obviously, very stout wrestling squad. And you mentioned basketball starting to come alive because they're starting to recruit in the areas that they should have probably hit on in years past. And they're starting to keep those kids in state, so to speak.
Yeah, so you look at their recent legend, Ron Harper Jr. He's in the NBA now. He's going back and forth between. I believe he's on Toronto. I believe that's where he is right now. But he's going back and forth between the NBA and the G League right now. But his brother Dylan Harper is a higher ranked recruit. He has yet to commit anywhere, but they're going all in on him, and they might get him now because he's a more sought after recruit than his older brother was. And then you look at what they've already done just right after that Ohio State win. They hosted this kid Ace Bailey, who's down from Georgia, 5-star prospect, top 10 recruit in the country, going across the recruiting services. Us at On3, we have him as a top 10 recruit overall in the country for the class of 2024. So they got a commitment from him, 5-star recruit, highest ranked recruit in program history. I think everything's looking up. Everything's just coming up, and Steve, it just goes to what the job that Steve Peichel has done for the Scarlet Knights. So now that they have him, and they can grab Dylan Harper, who could be next, and then you're talking about a loaded class of 2024 for the Scarlet Knights. And those are two guys that can be impact freshmen right away. I'm not saying Rutgers is going to turn into a one and done program, but this is going to be a consistent, middle to upper echelon type of program year in and year out now in the Big Ten. By the way, they've played over the past couple of years and what they've been able to develop under Steve Peichel.
Yeah, and I got to give a little shout out, a little love to the freshman guard, Derek Simpson, off the Turnpike exit 4, my old stomping ground. So, love to see that. Those Burlington County boys doing well. You mentioned Purdue in action tonight against Minnesota, as we just touched on. Their lone loss was against Rutgers. Are 17-1, Minnesota 7-8. Lines bumped up now to 12.5 to 13.5. I think Purdue arguably has one of the best players in the country, but also you can argue one of the best players in Big Ten, and the big man in Eddie. He's a double waiting to happen, man. This kid's a beast.
Yeah, he's literally a walking double. Zach, he's been a dominant guy for a couple of years now. Obviously, he's one of those guys that is probably pretty much in college like his whole career. Then he eventually goes to the NBA. But Purdue's a very good team, very talented team under Matt Painter. And it's interesting because I heard some comments about or from Matt Painter the other day. He was saying, because he was talking actually with Coach K, who has a show on Sirius XM, and he asked him, what is with the Big Ten? It seems like everyone's rising up, and Purdue had a lot of roster turnover as well because they graduated and lost a couple of guys to the NBA, and they still have Zach Edey, and they still have this very talented team. And just without going too in depth on Purdue basketball, this is a top 5 team for a reason, top 3 team for a reason. He's like you say, he's a walking double. I know they had a close game at Michigan State last weekend, but Michigan State's gonna be Michigan State, and regardless if they're going to be top 10, top 5, or on the cusp of top 25, it's still coached by Tom Izzo. So Purdue is one of those teams that can make a deep run, and it just goes to show the depth of the Big Ten this year. This conference pretty much goes 10 deep over the last couple of years, so I wouldn't be shocked if Purdue, Rutgers, you have Michigan State. Penn State is good this year. All of a sudden, the job that Micah Shrewsbury has done this year. So I wouldn't be surprised if you have another 8 to 10 team bid league from the Big Ten into the NCAA tournament.
No, that's not going to be a surprise. In years past, there's always ACC, Big East, give me 8 to 10. We kind of bookmark who it's going to be. I'm a big proponent. I mentioned this a couple nights ago. Guard play come March Madness. And look, you take in Purdue, for instance, with the kid the kid Smith. They're deep. And again, with the big man, that's a walking double. But I'm seeing that across the board. Houston, Alabama, Purdue, Kansas, these high ranking, these very good teams. I watched a little bit of Houston, and it almost reminds me like of yesteryear, where they just want to get up and down. I'm not going to equate it to Phi Sama Jama.
No, we can't
yet,
do
right?
that.
I can't do that. That's a disservice to those 82, 83, 84 squads. But if you're not following college basketball and you just kind of gloss at the newspaper or online or your phone and you see Houston, what are you talking about? They've
been like that for the past couple of years now, where they've slowly risen back to the cream of the crop. And now, am I going to say Houston is the de facto number 1 team in the country right now? The last AP poll, there's a lot of votes split between them, Kansas, and a couple for Purdue. But Kansas just lost the other night to Kansas State. But
say Purdue. I say Purdue right now.
I would say, I would probably say that. Yeah, if you're going to pick one, maybe you go Purdue, but I would say your top 2 are probably Houston and Purdue right now. Obviously, with the Kansas loss, they'll probably drop a spot or 2, or maybe a couple, just depending upon how the voters shake things out. But again, Kansas lost a overtime game on the road to Kansas State, who is a top 15 team this year as well. But, Rich, I'm going down the list. You mentioned Alabama. UCLA is really good this year. Nick Kosko is doing a heck of a job. Mark Few always does a great job with Gonzaga. They're all, based on the last AP poll at least, they're all top 10. Xavier, Tennessee, Texas, despite the whole Chris Beard incident, they've been a great story in college basketball. Once Beard was gone, they really didn't even miss a beat, obviously, with his unfortunate incident, obviously being charged with domestic violence. So, that's obviously a story for another day. But the way that Texas has been able to bounce back this season and just not let that become a distraction over the program has been actually unbelievable for the Longhorns.
Yeah, Virginia too. Arizona's playing well. I think Iowa State's in the mix. Virginia's a really good team because they have some of these teams that I'm looking at, teams like Virginia, Alabama, even UCLA, they're actually shooting not even par from the course when you think about it from beyond the arc. They're shooting right around 38 to 42, 43%. When you've got the interior presence like that and you get that spacing on the floor, that's why I think a team like Houston, a team like Purdue that literally has your rim protector, they're going to be a tough out, right? Because all you need is my guards to penetrate and facilitate. Some of these teams, it's crazy though. Some of these teams that are really good are the worst and I've watched it, and even games that I've laid units on, the worst free throw shooting teams in the world, man. It's incredible because typically conference play come tournament time as well, you have to be able, you can't be a 71% free throw shooting team and expect to win close games, especially when they're sticking guys.
No, because I mean, we see it every year in March Madness, whether you see upsets or you see these Cinderella stories or even the dominant teams. We know how college basketball is played. You're very rarely do you see a lot of teams that have a dominant down low presence and that also have sharp shooting from outside, or from beyond the arc, to rephrase myself there. So you always see this dribble and drive, the dishes down low. You're going to draw a lot of contact, a lot of fouls. And that's what, as you mentioned, in these types of basketball games where you're seeing more of the old school style of plays, particularly when it comes to tournament time, because most of the teams play like that because, this is not, and you're not watching NBA basketball here. You're not watching professionals just knocking these long twos or these long range threes down. You have these guys that are dribbling and driving, a lot of guard plays you mentioned, but if you have a dominant big man, that obviously also helps as well. So as you mentioned, if you can't nail your free throws, that's why you see some of these upsets, because you can't knock down. If you can't get your freebies, these games are a lot closer, and the other team all of a sudden has juice. That's why there's still that magic about college basketball, particularly when you get closer to March and obviously once you get into tournament play.
Yeah, and case in point, last night when we talk about some of these teams that live and die by the three, look at DePaul and Xavier last night. DePaul wins it 73-72. If you look at Xavier, I think they were 4-20 from beyond the arc. I mean, that's, again, some of these teams that live and die. That's why I always believe the teams that make the deepest runs come March are the teams that have solidified their backcourts. I mean,
and they have the sound fundamentals, and they take the points. They don't do anything extremely well. They'll do everything really well.
Yeah,
they're not excellent in one area. They're pretty much very good in all areas. And then occasionally you'll have the flashes of, X, Y, and Z areas are going to be your excellent areas for this game and this game and this game. And that puts you on a run.
Yeah, 100%. All right. So you called it last week on BYP. You thought at the end of the day, Harbaugh, which was probably the worst kept secret, but we like to dream a little bit because think about it. The coaching carousel in the NFL, we knew there were going to be some vacancies. So you're not surprised by this. And again, ultimately, I'm not either. I kind of go back to what you said. If you're trying to build a legacy, you stay in one place until you get the job done. And that appears to be the case too.
Yeah, I would say so. I kind of went back and revisited my old comments as well. Obviously, I'm not backtracking anything here. I mean, I predicted he was going to come back, and he is now. Obviously, we'll see what happens with these sanctions. Now, there's a new report coming out that he apparently lied, or he's refusing to say that he lied to investigators from 2020. I have to dive more into it, Rich, but he is coming back, and I mentioned before, and just going back to what I said a couple weeks ago, which was, I still think that he's eventually going to go back to the NFL. Things could always change year to year, month to month with this guy, obviously day to day with this guy in Jim Harbaugh. So I said that he would come back and try to get the job done. Now, what I said exactly was if they get back to the playoff next year and say they get to the national title, but they lose, he would still go. I would like to stick to my guns on that, but you bring up a good point where, maybe he does want to finish the job at Michigan, and it doesn't have to be a situation where he's a Nick Saban type where, he's going to build an immense Hall of Fame GOAT red type resume where he's going to win a couple national titles in Michigan. If he wins one, not even how about this? Not even a Kirby Smart resume where this guy's won two titles in a row for Georgia. If Harbaugh wins one, he's like, okay, I'm done. Like, where's the NFL opening? I feel like that is the biggest catalyst for him to get back to the pros, because I think ultimately all he wanted to do was bring back Michigan football to prominence, and he's pretty much done that aside from winning the big one. He's won 2 Big Ten titles. He's beaten Ohio State 2 years in a row now. He's gotten to the playoff. He just hasn't won the big one yet, which is, beat the likes of Georgia. Obviously, they had the upset loss to TCU, but let's be frank here. If they had beaten TCU, would they have beaten Georgia? Probably not. So they have yet to get over that SEC hump or the dominant Georgia, Alabama hump right now. If he does, I would say maybe then it's a little bit more of a serious look to go back to the NFL.
We can talk about this next week, so I'm not trying to catch you off guard here, but because he acknowledged that the university, his program committed, I think 3 or 4 level 2 violations, and he never went ahead and signed documents basically or publicly saying that he was not truthful, right? So I know they're still trying to come up with a negotiated resolution. This doesn't affect his obvious standing with the university and/or contract moving forward. But I guess Because I would assume if it was something really serious, maybe they would have paused a little bit before having contract extension or having new contract talks.
Right. And that was my assumption even a couple of weeks ago when this first came out, or whenever it was now. I mean, all the days blend together, of course. So when it first came out, I'm thinking to myself, well, if it really was that serious, I'm not going to say he was going to be the type of guy to pull a Pete Carroll move, but he very well could have, because if you're Harbaugh and say if these sanctions were very serious, who knows how long he could be suspended for. Or if he gets stuck in Michigan, maybe they have to say, you know what, we actually have to cut bait here. And now he's out of a job for a year. And if you're Jim Harbaugh, you don't want to be in that situation. So I figured if they were serious enough, he would have bolted and went to the NFL, and maybe would have been a little bit more serious about his NFL interest. Now, again, he was a reported top candidate, one of the top reported candidates for the Denver Broncos. Now, whether they go the Sean Payton route, they go a different route, but Harbaugh was in the mix. He was squarely in the mix for that job. But I think even the Broncos and Harbaugh knew that, we're going to do this flirtation thing again to gauge my interest. I think he ultimately still does want to go back to the pros and win a Super Bowl, but the timing still isn't right. Last year, it's almost, Rich, like the timing would have been better last year if he had left for the NFL, because now he goes out on top. Now, I know you lost to Georgia in the semifinals, but at that point, you're like, look, I finally conquered the beast, which was Ohio State. I won the Big Ten. I'll leave Michigan in a good spot. Now I'll go back to the pros. He flirted, came back, but he did it again. Now he's flirting again. But now it's like, all right, you're like the boy who cried wolf now at this point. So it's like, do you actually want to go back yet? Or do you want to do X, Y, and Z first here, making a lot of money, establishing more of your legacy at Michigan as a coach, in addition to being a player? I think he's in that latter category. So if those sanctions actually were that serious, he probably would have left or done something to just step away from the program.
Yeah,
but the way it is right now, I mean, again, like we said before, probably a slap on the wrist. Now, could I see? I mean, I'm just speculating here. We've seen in the past with certain coaches a 2-3 game suspension at the beginning of the year. Maybe. Is he still going to be a coaching behind the scenes? Of course he is. We know how this stuff works in the college and obviously in the pros. So I'm not worried about it at all for Jim Harbaugh. But I think ultimately he made the right decision to come back, and then we'll see where it goes from here. We can be talking about this next year as well.
That's a good analogy with the boy who cried wolf. Again, on 3 Sports is Nick Kosko joining us, BYP. Thursday edition, Rich Quinones here. All right, before I let you get out of here, I know you got to hit the road with Are You Wrestling. We don't want you to hit that turnpike traffic. I'll let you give me your path to victory Saturday night for your Philadelphia Eagles.
For the Philadelphia Eagles, oh boy. Well, prime time. I mean, first of all, they're playing home, so that's a huge advantage. Despite the fact the way they ended the season, Philly's a raucous atmosphere in the playoffs. I've seen it firsthand. They're in that last Super Bowl run. But I think they really, again, I'm not one of those guys that's going to say they're going to kill them. And I'm not overly worried about the Giants, but you should be worried about the Giants, because if Daniel Jones actually gets comfortable, and I can't believe I'm saying this about Daniel Jones based on the way his career started, but now the way he's playing this year, if he gets comfortable and he starts making the easy completions and they start turning into long gains after the catch, if he gets outside the pocket, starts making these runs on 3rd and 8 that he converts first downs with 15-yard runs, that's where I think the Eagles defense can get on their heels, and then they're playing a much closer game than they want to. If he's comfortable, then now you have to rely on, all right, how healthy is Jalen Hurts? Can he go back to what he was doing pretty much all year until he injured the shoulder? Then he saw the vanilla offense in Week 18. If they can contain Jones in the pocket, which I can't believe I'm saying this about Daniel Jones compared to Jalen Hurts, contain him in the pocket, make him make the tough decisions, they should be fine. And then you have to see how the offense operates for the Eagles. Because, again, they can exploit the Giants' defense, but it's up to Hurts and how much of a running threat he's going to be. If he's in the pocket, they can still win, but that dynamic running threat of Jalen Hurts keeps everybody's defense on their heels. So contain Daniel Jones and make sure Saquon Barkley doesn't beat you for three touchdowns.
Yeah, a couple things. They didn't have Jackson, McKinney, Williams, and the linebacker was out as well. It's a different team, man. I don't think they're rolling over by any stretch of the imagination. If they're down 10 in the fourth quarter, it's exactly where they want to be. And you're right. I believe Daniel Jones has played himself into a long-term contract. I'm sold. I'm all in on Daniel Jones, and I'm happy for the kid because he bet on himself and ultimately he backed it up. He backed his play, but it's going to be a very tough test for them to go on the road. Now, I will caution the likes of you, along with the other fans who have just been relentless while I've sat back and just basically tried to zen myself.
Oh, I've been zen this entire week. I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, but it's the smirkiness.
I'm not being smirky. The Eagles won 14 games for a reason.
You
The
said
number one seed for a
twice,
reason.
quote, I can't believe I'm saying this about Daniel Jones.
Well, that's a little different. I'm
All
talking
right.
about Daniel
So then
Jones.
hold on a second. Then where's the confidence level? Is the confidence level, are you flated up on the Duke or are you deflated on the Duke?
On a confidence scale that the Eagles are going to win from 1 to 10, I'm about at a 7.
All right. So you're flated up. I call it flated, not inflated. All right, that's fine. We have to be different on the show. We like to make up words here.
Of course.
All right, pal. So you got wrestling tonight?
Friday night and Sunday afternoon. So 7 o'clock tomorrow on Friday and 2 o'clock on Sunday, both on Big Ten Plus. Rutgers hosts Michigan State on Friday and Michigan on Sunday. So the whole state is coming over to New Jersey over the weekend. So it's going to be some tough wrestling tomorrow. And then, of course, on Sunday, another tough match against the third-ranked Wolverines.
All right, good stuff as always. Everyone give Nick a follow on social media at Nick Kosko 59 College Football on 3 Sports, play-by-play, RU Wrestling, South Jersey High School Sports in our backyard, and unabashed Rutgers and Eagles fan, which deflated. All right, my friend. Appreciate a couple moments on BYP, pal.
I appreciate you, Rich.
All right.